Operation Sindoor made it amply.
Hello and welcome. I'm Sima Katauka and you're watching the World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at the top headlines of this hour. Yemen has said that 7 people have been killed in the country as Saudi-led coalition attacked the UAE-backed separatists. More than 20 people have also been wounded in the alleged attack. Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro says he is open to negotiating with the United States on combating drug trafficking. He strikes a more conciliatory tone towards Washington, even as he remains silent on reports of a recent CIA-led strike. The Israeli military says it intercepts a false target in Bahram after drone sirens sound, while Hezbollah sources deny involvement. The incident comes as pressure grows on Lebanon to disarm Hezbollah under a possible truce deal. As the humanitarian crisis worsens in Gaza, foreign ministers of Saudi Arabia, Jordan, UAE, Indonesia, Pakistan, Turkey, Qatar, and Egypt have expressed deep alarm. The ministers have also highlighted that the severe weather has laid bare the fragility of existing humanitarian conditions. Investigators continue searching for victims after a Swiss ski resort bar fire that has killed around 40 people and injured more than 100 people. With doctors treating severe burn cases, officials say identification could take days or weeks as the cause remains unclear and forensic teams work at the scene. China says President Xi will host South Korean President Lee Jae-myung from Sunday, signaling a push to strengthen ties. It is their second meeting in 2 months, with Beijing emphasizing economic cooperation and tourism amid regional strains. Hong Kong's anti-graft agency arrests 21 people over suspected corruption linked to renovation projects at 2 housing estates. Authorities say the action follows a wider crackdown after a deadly high-rise fire and includes allegations of bribery and bid manipulation. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has named spy chief Budanov as the new chief of staff. This comes after the dismissal of PF Andriy Yermak, the longtime chief of staff. Now for this hour, we start with Iran. Iran's President Masoud Pezeshkian has acknowledged that government failings are behind the current crisis crippling the country. His comments come as protests spread nationwide over worsening economic conditions. Iran's economy has been struggling for years mainly because of US and Western sanctions over Tehran's nuclear program. Regional tensions led to a 12-day air war with Israel in June, further straining the country's finances. Let's listen into what the Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian has shared.
شما مقصرید. دنبال آمریکا نگردید، دنبال نمیدونم کسی دیگه نرید. ماییم که باید خدمت بدیم و اونا از ما راضی باشن. ماییم باید که منابعمون رو درست مدیریت کنیم. ماییم باید راه پیدا کنیم و مشکل حل کنیم. ماییم باید که تلاش بکنیم و این مشکلات رو براش راه حل پیدا کنیم.
Now, before we delve into the discussion, I would like to show our viewers a glimpse of the scale of these protests. Now, for this discussion, we welcome former Ambassador Mahis Sachdev. He's a former diplomat, joins us live from New Delhi. Thank you very much, Ambassador Mahis Sachdev, for joining us once again. Good to see you and Happy New Year. Now, looking at Iran's situation, what is government supposed to do or doing to ease out these protests, and what more can you tell us about this?
Thank you, Ashuma. Glad to be back at TV.
Thank you.
Your television channel. I think the situation is quite serious. Economically, Iran has been suffering due to US sanctions. European Union also has sanctions imposed on it. US sanctions primarily disallow any export of crude oil and gas. Whatever Iran has been exporting is clandestinely, and 90% of it goes to China through surreptitious means. That's not good enough because Iran oil used to be the mainstay of Iranian economy. So it has had across the board impact on the economy. The economy has also suffered due to large-scale military activity in June, with Israel and United States also taking part in the aerial action against Iranian nuclear and military assets. Iran has striven to rebuild those assets destroyed during the war. Thirdly, it has also lost much of leverage through proxies in Iraq, in Syria, in Lebanon, and to some extent in Yemen as well, due to Israeli action against them and due to swift shifts in their respective policies over the period. Iraq, for example, used to balance between United States and Iran, and following the war with Israel and Iran, Iraqi policy seemed to have shifted slightly more towards United States, with the import of Iranian gas being curbed, and Iran's usage of Iraqi ports to clandestinely move oil and gas and petroleum products abroad has also come to somewhat decline. All told, this has had a grievous impact on the fiscal situation in Iranian government, and Iranian currency, for example, has had 50% or nearly half the value of Iranian currency in the open market has gone during 2025. Iranian rial's market rate is 1.3 million Iranian rial to a dollar, while the official rate is only 42,000 to a dollar. So you can see the discrepancy. Iran used to supply the cheapest petrol in the world to its consumers, but it has tried to rationalize and raise prices selectively to the motorists, and this has had cascading impact on commodities and services within Iran, and that has led to this crisis, and rising prices, falling value of Iranian rial has upset people, and they are demonstrating, keeping in mind that members of the ruling elite lead a secluded life,
Yes.
quite affluently,
Yes.
and therefore there is certain amount of public distaste against what the regime is trying to do. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador, for sharing that. Please stay with us as we stay on this news now. Meanwhile, Iran is warning the United States against any intervention drawing a clear red line on national security. The warning follows President Donald Trump's pledge to aid Iranian protesters if security forces fire on them. Trump has said the U.S. was locked and loaded and ready to go. Top advisor Ali Shamkhani has said that any threat to Iran's security would be met with a response. Senior official Ali Larijani has warned U.S. interference could destabilize the entire region. The remarks come as Iran faces its biggest protests in 3 years. Demonstrations over soaring inflation and collapsing rial have turned deadly in western provinces. At least 7 people have been reportedly killed, with arrests and security crackdowns underway. Now for this discussion, we welcome back former Ambassador Mahis Sachdev. Thank you very much, Ambassador, for staying with us. As you know, you laid it out all for us, what's the situation like in Iran right now. Why is U.S. now interfering or eyeing this situation, and how do you analyze the response given by Iranian officials?
One of the issues that brings Israel and United States together is Iran. And the summit in Mar-a-Lago between Israeli Prime Minister and US President was naturally concerned with going-ons in Iran. And US lost no opportunity to hit out at the ruling elite in Iran and give whatever encouragement it could to the demonstrating people in Iran against the regime, saying that if repression continues, then the United States would intervene in this matter. How would the United States intervene has not been said, but most observers would regard it as an unlikely possibility, because the United States is doing whatever it can to impose sanctions on Iran, and that has caused the crisis in the first place. Secondly, President Trump is quite clear. He doesn't want to have any boots of American troops on ground in the Middle East or anywhere else in the world. He has criticized his predecessors for waging endless wars in Middle East, particularly in Afghanistan, Iraq, and elsewhere. And I am almost certain that it's not his intention to get involved militarily in Iran. What he could perhaps do is to promote an alternate government,
Yes.
promote dissidents, etc., etc. But it'll play into Iranian regime's hands. The genuine economic crisis faced by Iranian public, notwithstanding, the Iranian regime would portray the demonstrations as being waged by the American agents or Israeli agents, and so on and so forth. In any case, Iranian regime over past 4 decades in power has perfected a very good toolkit to suppress and take care of such demonstrations. They react initially with hard hands. Then if the protests continue, they give some token concessions to assuage people, and subsequently the leaders of the demonstrations, etc., are selectively imprisoned and prosecuted and punished, mostly by long prison sentences or even executions. So this toolkit is available to Iranian government, I should say.
Yes.
And would eventually contain the crisis at home.
Ambassador, thank you very much for joining us and sharing that insight with us on NewsX World. Now we move the focus on to Middle East. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has said that he will speak with US President Donald Trump on Monday to discuss peace efforts in Ukraine and the situation in Gaza. Erdogan has also confirmed that Turkey's Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan will attend an upcoming Coalition of the Willing meeting in Paris, where nations backing Ukraine are set to coordinate. The announcement comes as 8 countries, UAE, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Egypt, Indonesia, Pakistan, and Turkey issued a joint statement expressing concerns over worsening humanitarian conditions in Gaza amid harsh winter weather and limited aid. The nations have called on Israel to allow the UN and international NGOs to operate freely in Gaza and the West Bank, emphasizing that restrictions on humanitarian work are unacceptable. Recent Israeli measures require NGOs to submit lists of Palestinian staff to authorities violating European privacy rules and may result in banning of over 37 NGOs from Gaza, further complicating relief efforts. Now for this discussion, we welcome Ms. Alison Mutler. She's a former AP Bureau Chief in Romania, joins us live from Bucharest. Thank you very much, Ms. Mutler, for joining us once again. Good to see you.
Hello, Asuma.
Thank you. Now, looking at this, why is Turkey going to be present in the upcoming coalition of the willing meeting, and what does Turkey's simultaneous engagement, Ukraine and Gaza, suggest about their foreign policy priorities right now?
Well, Turkey is a key player in the region. It's in the Middle East. Part of its land, Istanbul, is in Europe, and whereas the rest of it is in Asia. So it's in the key crossroads of this part of the world. They have the Middle East to the south. They have the Black Sea, where a war is being waged between Russia and Ukraine, and they have Ukraine to the north. And they're next to EU and NATO members, Bulgaria, Greece, and Romania. And on the other side, they have former Soviet republics of Georgia and Armenia, as well as Syria and Iraq. So it's a very key strategic geopolitical position. Turkey is not a member of the European Union, but it is a key member of NATO. At the beginning of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, it did stage talks between Russian and Ukrainian officials. It wanted to be a peace broker, both internationally and regionally, fought to put an end to that war. That wasn't possible. Now, Turkey is also a member of this coalition of the willing, which is to help and support Ukraine. Most NATO members are, apart from the United States, and there are non-NATO members such as Australia. And I think Turkey does, because it's a big regional player and it has a big strategic importance, wants a seat at the table of the coalition of the willing. It has a unique position. Vladimir Putin will talk, I think, to Erdogan, so will Zelensky. So they do have a position geostrategically that perhaps countries in Western Europe don't have, or Australia, for example. And they also do have deep intelligence about the region. You mentioned Gaza. They've had key words to say about Gaza as well as Ukraine. So I think they are very keen for their weight to be seen at the coalition of the willing, and also with regards to Gaza. They want Turkey to be seen to be playing a key role internationally.
And how do you analyze Turkey? Do you think, earlier when Ukraine and Russia war started, they were kind of trying to be a mediator over there or between them, and even hosting few talks in Turkey. But now, where do you see them? Do you think they're still a possible mediator, or are they on the side of Ukraine or Russia?
Turkey has always tried to portray itself, it is in NATO, which means it sort of should be on the side of Ukraine. But I think Vladimir Putin and the Russians do sort of talk to them. Both Vladimir Putin and Erdogan are authoritarian leaders. And for sure, Erdogan is not seen as a totally pro-Western. Erdogan, Turkey plays its hand quite carefully. But I think for Russia and for Ukraine, particularly for Russia, Turkey is seen probably too much as a regional power, and Russia prefers to deal with major world powers, and that sort of means the United States, particularly Donald Trump, who is seen to be in favor of Putin, also China, which is a bigger player, and also India, which Modi has been quite favorable to Putin. He invited him to India at the beginning of last month, December. So I think even though politically there may be some level of agreement with Erdogan that, say, Putin would not have with, I don't know, French President Macron. He wants to play, he wants to be seen to be dealing with the very big world leaders of very populous, what he considers important nations, such as I said, America, China, and India.
Right. Thank you very much, Ms. Mutler, for sharing that. Please stay with us as we stay on this topic now. Now, moving on to our next news, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says that he has asked Kirilo Budanov, the head of the country's military intelligence agency, to be his new chief of staff, filling a weeks-long vacancy left by the resignation of Mr. Zelensky's right-hand man over a corruption scandal. The departure in November of the top aide Andriy Yermak, who had also served as Kyiv's lead peace negotiator, cleared the way for a political overhaul that had been long deferred by the war. But it has also left Mr. Zelensky without his main enforcer at the delicate moment in talks with the United States over ending the war with Russia. According to experts, Mr. Budanov has been seen as a potential rival to Mr. Zelensky as the United States and Russia call for elections in Ukraine. Bringing the general into the presidential office could complicate any run by Mr. Budanov for the presidency. Now for this discussion, we welcome back Ms. Alison Mutler. She's joining us from Bucharest. Thank you very much, Ms. Mutler, for staying with us. Now looking at this, who is this particular new individual in light, Mr. Budanov, and how do you think this will be changing Ukraine's dynamics, even in the talks and even in President's office?
Well, Mr. Budanov is not a name particularly known outside Ukraine, except for people who are following the developments in Ukraine with the Russia-Ukraine war very closely. But inside Ukraine, Mr. Budanov is almost a legendary figure. He is seen as having spearheaded some of Ukraine's more daring attacks on Russia, and he's very well respected, and he's head of the military intelligence. And in a country like Ukraine, which has been at war for the last 4 years, to be head of military intelligence is an extremely important role to play. He's fairly young. He's younger than Zelensky. He's 39 years old. He's widely respected. And I think the reason that Mr. Zelensky chose him, because first of all, it did take a few weeks, so Zelensky did not quickly replace him just to show that he had somebody new in the job. He thought very carefully who he could put in position, somebody who was both very competent on issues of security, defense, and on diplomacy, which Mr. Budanov is, but also someone who would gain Zelensky support both in Ukraine and with his domestic audience, but also somebody could act as a key negotiator or a key link, if not a direct negotiator, with Europe, with the United States, and eventually at some point with Russia. So he thought carefully, and even though, as you said, he's a potential rival, we haven't had elections announced. I don't think we're anywhere near that, because we have to, and there needs to be some sort of settlement to the current hostilities, whatever that will be, and whenever it might happen. He wants somebody who is what we call a heavyweight as his right-hand man. And in Mr. Budanov, that's what he's found. We could congratulate Mr. Zelensky, because instead of putting a yes man in that position, he's actually putting a very strong character. Somebody who, as you said in your report, at some point could challenge him for the leadership. So this shows that Zelensky really is a leader, and he is keen to put somebody who is a heavyweight in a very important position at a very delicate time. At a time where Zelensky says we're 90% agreed on a peace deal. So I would say it's a positive movement. It did take time, but it meant that Zelensky did think carefully about who would replace the former man who is being investigated for very serious corruption.
Yes, thank you. With that, I would like to thank Ms. Mutler for joining us today and sharing that insight on this news. Thank you very much. Now we move on the focus to India. 11 people have passed away and over 1,400 residents have fallen ill after drinking contaminated water in Indian city of Indore, exposing what officials and sources now describe as a preventable administrative failure. Investigators traced the contamination to a leak in the main drinking water pipeline near a public toilet beside the local police outpost, allowing sewage to mix with potable water. Health department tests confirmed the victims fell sick after consuming the contaminated supply. Officials revealed that a tender to replace the faulty pipeline was floated as early as August of 2025, following complaints of foul-smelling and dirty water. However, no repairs or emergency measures were carried out until the deaths were reported. Chief Minister and Urban Administration Minister acknowledged negligence, while the National Human Rights Commission has taken suo motu cognizance, calling it a possible human rights violation. A probe has been ordered and some officials suspended, but key questions over delays and accountability still remain unanswered. Now for this discussion, we welcome Dr. P.S.V. Rao. He's a senior doctor, joins us live from Bangalore. Thank you very much, doctor, for joining us, and welcome to NewsX World. Now, unfortunately, this news is coming out from a city which has, awarded being the cleanest city in India a few times. What more can you tell us about this ongoing investigation and about this probe?
Good evening to you and to your viewers.
Thank you.
This is a tragedy that was waiting to happen and is waiting to happen in many parts of not only India, of the world, because all these old water pipelines are made of either cast iron or GI steel, and these are prone to corrosion underground because of either acidity of the water itself or acidity of the water around the pipes, and the availability of oxygen mixed up in the water itself and around it. These lead to rusting and corrosion, and various salts which may be there in the minerals, which may be there in the piped water, can also add to the corrosion problem. Now, these pipes are underground and are not marked in any of these old cities. The only place where the pipeline exists is where the control valve is present. Modern pipelines are often made of non-corrosive material like PVC or other such compounds and plastics, and they also have access points in different parts of the pipeline through which you could pass sensors, which may be fiber optic, which may be visual, it may be acoustic, it may be to sense vibrations and check where the leak is. The problem is when this leak starts, no one knows where the leak is, and it is when it starts leaking, the water supply organization or the company or the government involved in it, their people start closing the water supply, and instead of having a continuous water supply, they make it an intermittent water supply, so that to reduce the leak. What the intermittent water supply causes is that every time the water supply is cut off, the water inside the pipe drains out through gravity, and it causes a vacuum inside, a negative pressure inside these pipelines, and because of that, air and water or whatever soil around it gets sucked in, and the water then gets contaminated with the contaminated water outside. The contaminated water outside in this was a sewage pipeline, sewage there. It can also be rainwater which has got contaminated, or flood waters which get contaminated. And diarrheal diseases is the major cause of death around the world, not only in India, all over the world. And the only way to control this is to have safe drinking water. And even here, it is the sewage which has caused a E. coli infection, contamination of the water, and it is that infection which is causing these diarrheal deaths, especially in newborns and children. And
Yes.
this is why drinking water needs to be very safe, and there has to be constant checking of the quality of the water, and the people consuming this water should use, if they don't have specific water filters or purification, they should at least boil this water before they use it. But the
Yes.
tragedy is that a lot of these people are poor, they are unable to do it. With great difficulty they get some drinking water, and often from tankers and pipelines, and the contamination, of course contamination can also occur in wells and in bore wells, but piped water is thought to be safe. But in this case there was contamination, there were signs of contamination, like the water was smelling, it was discolored, and this has been going on for the past few months. Action was not taken.
Yes.
Now same
Doctor-
thing can happen with the sewage pipeline also.
Doctor, so what do you think, what did this delay between identifying the pipeline, faulty pipeline, taking corrective action reveals about the accountability, also government, and what should they do in state levels to make sure this does not repeat? And like, you know, you earlier rightfully mentioned that this is not just this particular issue that that has led to deaths. There's so many more cases like this, and could be awaiting to take place.
Yes. Now you see, when a sewage pipeline leaks, it creates a stink, and everyone affected also creates a stink, and these things are immediately identified and sorted out. But when the water pipeline leaks and they start doing interrupted supply, and this problem occurs, no one realizes it. And when the when this problem arises and someone even points it out, no one bothers about it. This is why there has to be accountability, like you mentioned. The responsibility has to be fixed, and people who are supposed to be maintaining this water pipeline, it needs to be tested. Now there are modern methods of testing for leak, finding out where the leak is. You don't have to dig a trench and dig up the whole pipeline to find out where the leak is. There are methods which are acoustic, there are ground radars, there are various other methods now available to check. And many of these old pipelines, which are more than 20 to 25 years, I think they should be straight away tested and replaced. And this has to be done to save lives. Otherwise, we are going to continue to lose lives. And like I said earlier,
Yes, Dr. Rao, unfortunately, we're running out of time for that discussion. But once again, thank you very much for joining us on NewsX World and sharing that insight. Well, viewers, that's all we have time for. Keep watching NewsX World for more news updates from around the world.